minus 2. If I take it out of each of these, I look to C, and I'm left with a 5x minus 3. So this is what we call factoring by grouping. And again, we did that early on in the week before spring break. So again, it's a little bit longer ago, probably almost 2 weeks ago now. But we'll review that a little bit more today. It also mentions factoring using that reverse FOIL, and this is what we did. This is what we did with the bingo game. This is where we look to see. We're going to break this up and try to do the opposite of FOIL. So we look to see this x squared is going to be x and x. But this is the one where I want to multiply to get 24. But we want to add to get negative 10. So I have to think of things that multiply to give me a positive 24, but add to give me a negative 10. And this is where a lot of you guys pulled out, or a few of you guys pulled out like multiplication tables. But since I want it to be a positive and I wanted to add to be a negative, they're both going to be negative. So negative 1 and negative 24. And I'm just kind of making a list here. And this is our list of factors that would multiply to give me a negative or positive 24. But then when I add them to get a positive or a negative 10, we're just going to use these bottom two. So these are our two factors. So that's kind of like solving a puzzle there. And like I said, some of you guys like puzzles, others of you do not. So it's kind of trying to come up with that. So that was another thing we learned before break. And finally, the first thing we learned about factoring was just factoring out a GCF. And that's where I take a common factor out of each of these. So I can take a 3 out, but if you notice, there's not a variable I can take out of both because one has an x and one has a y. So I'm just going to take the 3 out, and I'm going to be left with x squared minus 2y. And that would be it. So I just take that GCF out. So again, this is what we did prior to break. And so again, if you were gone or you just don't remember what we did, this was kind of a quick 5-minute review here. Hopefully kind of jogging your memory a little bit. So what we're going to learn today is kind of a combination of these bottom two. So we're going to factor by a GCF and we're going to do that reverse FOIL. So, and this, if you guys notice the title of the section, it says day 1, so we'll do a day 2 tomorrow of the more difficult problems like these. So, okay, so our first step on this is we're going to want to see if we can take out a GCF. So we're going to look up for our greatest common factor of all three terms. And I'm going to tell you just about everything today is going to have this GCF. So if I look at the 2, the 10, the 28, they can all be divided by 2. So 2 is my GCF, so I'm going to factor that out. So if I divide these all by 2, now what's left inside the parentheses, now we're going to do reverse FOIL on that. So, so what's going to happen is all of the problems today will end up being this step 2, that we're going to be able to now say, now we have this as x squared plus some bx plus c. Now ours are minus, but that's okay. We're going to factor using this reverse FOIL. So since I know I'm trying to multiply to get this x squared, it's going to be x and x. And then our way that we learned that reverse FOIL is we want to multiply to negative 14. but we want to add to be negative 5. So I want to think of things that multiply to negative 14, but add to a negative 5. So we have our list here. And if I want to add to get a negative 5, the bigger number needs to be negative. So it's going to be this negative 7 and a positive 2. So essentially this is what we're doing for today. Steps 3, 4, and 5 are day 2. So we're going to wait on those. Those are definitely a little bit trickier. So what basically is going to happen is tomorrow this step isn't going to work. It's going to say we don't have this x squared plus bx plus c, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. So next problem here again, look for our GCF. So see if you guys can figure out what comes out of these 3. So check and see what would come out of the 3 in that second example there. How's it going? Good to see you. I know. Yeah, I just talked to them about that. I don't think you guys know about it. I think it's no, I mentioned it to person and then we talked about it. So just Tuesday, Thursday. Because we kind of ran away. Okay, Matt. Yeah, does that help? Yeah. So then it's like an hour at the end of the day. It's just basically.
Yeah, I realize that.
So I like printed myself like a news account.
Way more. But they're more than that shape.
For that one. That one's not.
Oh, and actually, yeah, it'd be better then, right? Oh, I wonder. I drove past over Spring. Well, I drive past every day, but I thought of you as I was driving past over Spring.
Well, like we went earlier.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so hopefully you guys realize we can take a 5 out. So we can divide a 5 out of all of those. But if I divide them each by 5, I have to rewrite what they would look like. 30 divided by 5, and then 40 divided by 5 would be 8. So that first step, we should be able to do, divide that common factor out. And then we're on to this new step 2. Well, not really new, we've done this before. We're going to break this up as 2 sets of parentheses. So the x squared is automatically going to be x and x. So every problem today should be able to go into this step next. Now we want to multiply to get 8, but add to get 6. Both positive, so we can stick with all positives. So 1 and 8, 2 and 4 is our comprehensive list there. So the one that works is positive 2, positive 4. Right, questions? So that's what we're doing today, and I think it's kind of a good way to start back after a break because it really does combine 2 things we already knew how to do. So if you guys are ready, flip it over to the back side. We're just going to practice that a little bit more. And if you haven't caught on already, this is probably going to happen in almost all of these. The number you can divide out is usually going to be the first number. So that's kind of a little bit of a spoiler alert in this case. That won't be the case all the time, like if we're doing another type of problem. But on these, it's going to be that first value. So I can take out that 3. 6 divided by 3 would be 2. Negative 72 divided by 3 would be a negative, was that 24? I think. 3 goes into 7, yeah, 24. So again, just getting in the habit of doing this reverse FOIL. It's going to be x and x. I want to multiply to get negative 24, but we're going to add to get 2. Positive 2. And kind of like once I find the one that works, like I know negative 4 and 6 now would work because that'd be a positive 2. Then I can stop looking. I don't have to keep making my list. Sorry, I feel like they're being right there. So negative 4, positive 6. And remember, the order you put them in doesn't matter as long as the 6 is the positive one. All right, see if you guys can try the next one. Take out the GCF and then factor that. Number 5 is a little bit tricky since we're like lowering the shades, but like
Freaks me out.
I know it doesn't. I always think it's Zippy. Like I'm always like, Zippy, what are you doing?
Like,
Yeah, no, it's Mr. Hatfield scaring us. Well, that's it. All right. Again, hopefully you're trying this next one. Again, we can take out this 4 to begin with. Divide them all by 4. So now this one we want to multiply to get a positive 20. We want to add to get a negative 9. Now when I want to multiply to get a positive but add to get a negative, they're both going to be negative. So the two negatives are going to be the negative 4 and the negative 5. And again, the order you put them in does not matter. But we do want to keep that 4 out in the front, so it is important that you don't just drop that like number off that you factored out. Okay? All right, number 5 is a little bit tricky. I know I saw some of you guys working ahead and kind of got stuck at number 5. Because number 5 is a little bit weird because of the fact that there's a negative in front. So think about what we'd be taking out then to get rid of that negative. What would we be taking out? How do I change that x squared to a positive? What would I divide out? Yeah, Lizzie? Yeah, you can take out a negative 1. And this is kind of a strange one, but it really helps this problem to make it easier to factor. So we're going to take out a negative 1 here. And if you just wanted to take out a negative, that's fine. But it's like you're changing all these signs. So this is going to become a negative x and negative 1x if you want. And this would become a negative 20. So we want to multiply to negative 20, but add, that's really like a negative 1 there. Oh, thank you. Holy cow, yeah, awesome.
A little bit more, I said a little bit.
Okay, awesome, perfect.
When do you need them back?
We're doing like almost the whole month.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's Mr. Frias drops these off. So we're doing a shoe drive, so like use like shoes that don't fit you anymore, or maybe you're like that's not in style anymore. You can, kids in Africa would be glad to have them because they need shoes. So Mr. Frias just brought me some. There'll be bags in your WIN classrooms. So, all right, my little promo there for that. So we have x and x. We want to multiply to negative 20, add to -1. So -1 and 20, I'm making my list here. And then I realize when I flip them, that the -5 and +4 is the one that works to get that -1 there. Okay. And then our last one of our non-review questions, and then we'll go and do a review questions, a couple of review grouping, is we're gonna take out this 2 again. So I'm dividing 2 out of everything. I want to multiply to get -16, but add to get +15. Can you not do that, please? Multiply to -16 and add to +15. This is the one that I think a lot of times people get thrown off by, but if you make the list the way I do, I think you almost can't miss it. Because I always start with 1 in the number, and that's already it. -1 and +16, if I add them, they give me a +15. So it's x minus 1, x plus 16. So anytime someone like asks, they're like, I'm not finding the factor that works, I'll usually say make a list. And usually that's my clue to you that you probably are missing what I consider like the obvious factor. All right, what we're gonna finish up with today, and then you guys will have the rest of the time to work. I know it's kind of rough getting back into things, so I appreciate your attention, or at least pretending to be attentive. We're gonna go through just a couple of review problems with grouping, and then you guys will just have a worksheet to work on to practice this. So, all right, so again, this is review from before break, and again, this is something we learned the last week before break, so if you were gone, or just forgot what we learned, this is what we were talking about. And this is that grouping where when it's 4 terms like this, I'm gonna break it into 2 parts. And I'm gonna factor each part separately. So out of this red part, I'm gonna look for the GCF of just that part. So 12 and 2, I'm gonna take out a 2. But I can also take out an x squared, that's also common there. So I'm gonna take a 2x squared out of each of those. And it helps to like write that I'm doing that. I might like write it underneath, kind of like showing I'm dividing. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. X to the third over x is just going to be x. 2x to the second and 2x to the second is actually going to cancel, but I need to put a +1 as like a placeholder. Then I'm going to look at the blue part. Out of the blue, we can take out, we want them to match with the first half, so I'm going to take out a -5. And the reason we're choosing to take out a negative is, again, because we want it to match with this 6x plus 1. So if I divide a -5 out of each of these, negative divided by a negative is a positive, 30 over 5 is 6, and there's an x there. The 5 over 5 is just going to cancel and just be 1. So now I have the same thing twice. So then we're just going to rewrite it. So between these two, I have this 6x plus 1. And if I take that 6x plus 1 out of there, I'm left with 2x squared minus 5. So this is what we called factoring by grouping. And we did that, like again, right before break. And rowdy next door over there. All right, out of this first half, we can take out an 8r to the second. And we're going to be left with r, and then minus 8. Now, if you look at the second half, we already have an r minus 8, so then when I don't know what else to take out, I can always just take out a positive 1. It's just kind of a placeholder so that I know that's what we took out. Technically, we didn't really take out anything. So this is r minus 8. So then again, when I look at these two parts, this r minus 8 is common, and then I'm going to be left with 8r to the second plus 1. So that's our two parts there. Okay, I'm going to get you guys a worksheet that goes with this.
I also tried to remember the order.
And I'm going to change up a little bit with this. We're not going to do them all, but we're going to do a majority of them.
There's one I think it's in
I'm trying to think. I know that when you write it out, it looks like that. 4 of those words. So that's definitely those words.
Okay, guys. So what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to have you guys just do the odds on the front, but then on the back I'm going to have you do all, because that's the new thing we learned. So only the front we're doing half, the back we're going to do all. Does that make sense? And the front, if you're unsure what we should be doing, it says to factor completely. This is the reverse FOIL. Then it tells you grouping, and then the back side is the new stuff we just learned. Okay, so that's what I want you guys to do for all. So front is odds, back is all, and it should be on. And then again, if you're struggling with this at all, maybe asking to come in for Win today. I did request some of you guys already, but it might be a good idea for